Hello, friends. How are you? It is that time again, and so I am patiently waiting for people to jump on here and for my guest to arrive. So, hello, Lens. And so, as we wait, I hope all is well with everybody. I guess I'm just talking to you right now, Lens. So, yeah, a chill Wednesday afternoon here in Calgary. And so, yeah. Lens, what are you grateful for? Oh, there's my guest. Hey, Drill, I see you. There's the stud.
How you doing?
I'm great. So yourself?
Good. You're looking fresh. You got a haircut or
Yep.
what?
Yeah, dog.
Yeah, yeah.
Had to look pretty for you, sir.
Always. I expect it.
Good. I love that. I love that. Good to see you, brother. I think we're a little
Yeah,
bit
you too.
early, so we're just going to give people a minute or two to jump on.
Cool.
In the meantime, what are you grateful for today on this Wednesday, sir?
I am grateful for being able to work out again. I did
Yeah.
my first lower body workout since the surgery today, and I'm hoping it doesn't hurt too much tomorrow, but we'll see.
Love it. Dude, that's so
Yeah. What about
good.
you?
I'm grateful for, so I just finished Cairo, and I'm
Okay.
grateful that like everything's in check. Everything feels good, and my
Yeah.
spine as well. And I just saw a bunch of the boys at Cairo, so I felt like kind of the watering hole, which was great. So I'm grateful for that.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, man. Feel free for the rest of our guests to drop into the chat. What are you grateful for today? And so, with that being said, Jared, welcome to KOH Live. I know you've participated in
Thank
other
you,
ones,
sir.
and it's cool to have you be a part of this. And just thank you for being here. I don't
Thank you.
take that
Thank
lightly.
you. And I am excited. This is my first ever Instagram live. So,
Yes.
yeah, we're going to hopefully start off strong here.
Yeah, we are. Don't worry. Don't worry. This is gonna be great. It's gonna be great. So for our viewers, Jared, what do you do here in the city? Let them know.
For sure. I guess it's an interesting question right now because it's changed a lot over the last
Mm,
little bit. I mean, as you know,
mm,
about I guess over the last year here, I've kind of gone through a quarter life crisis, and which has caused me to make a ton of changes in my life,
yeah.
and kind of hit the reset button. And so right now, currently, I have a job, just bartending at a restaurant here in Calgary.
Hmm.
But on the side, I started a podcast, which I host and do typically weekly episodes.
Yeah.
And then currently, I am working on a new project on the side for a text-based commerce platform, which is going to be focused around craft beer. So hopefully have
Love it.
that up and running. Yeah.
Love it. A man of many talents. I love that. Thanks, Jared. My next question here is, so how did you hear about KOH, King of
Yeah.
Hearts?
And yeah, it was an interesting one, actually, an interesting story
Mm,
where it just kind of happened. And I was just scrolling Instagram one day, and one of the guys that I used to work in the same space with, Vlad, he actually did a profile on Andy.
sweet.
And Andy just kind of looked a little bit familiar. And I'm like, where do I know this guy from? And so I clicked
Mm,
into it, and it went into, starting King of Hearts and a little bit of what you guys do. And so did a little bit of research and found out that you guys were actually doing a meetup, and decided to jump in, and randomly showed up by myself, not knowing
yeah.
anybody there.
Yeah.
And the rest is just kind of history.
Hey, man, I love that. I love that. And what, so I guess like what in you was like, hey, like I'm gonna show up to this event by yourself, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Not knowing me, I guess not knowing me or Sohan or any of the other boys. Like,
Yeah.
what was inside you that was like, you should be there?
For sure. And it had been a bit of a long road, actually.
Okay.
So it started like a few years ago.
Mm.
I started seeing a therapist, started doing a lot of inner work and kind of peeling back the layers and finally getting to the point of realizing that I needed to do a lot of work on myself,
Mm.
and not really knowing what I liked is
Yes.
one of the big ones. And so one of the things that I committed to doing for myself was trying new things.
Mm.
And so it kind of seemed like the perfect combination of one, a new environment with new people that I didn't know, and two, really having it focusing on mental health, just
Yeah.
kind of hit a bunch of buttons. And I said,
Mm.
well, I mean, the worst that happens is, I lose an hour or two of my life and I never go back again.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I decided to just take the plunge and was nervous as hell and
Mm.
showed up, but like all the guys were so amazing. And yeah,
Love that. Love that. Okay, so which brings me to my next question. So,
yeah.
why is King of Hearts important, and specifically men's mental health? Why is that important to you?
For sure. And I think the biggest one is there aren't a lot of spaces that allow men specifically to have those kinds of
Mm.
conversation,
Yeah.
right? Of being open and honest and, talking about how you really feel without having to put on, this mask of this is what a man is supposed to be. This is how a man is supposed to act, and
Mm.
just making it safe for though to open up. Right. And
Yep.
really that was an environment that I had never experienced before. And so
Beauty.
that's, that was the big draw and why I think it's important. And, um, you know,
Uh-oh, I think we might have lost you there. Let's wait here and see, guys. Oh, there you go. Found you.
okay, we're back. Yeah. And so, just the last part was just with doing all the work with all the different groups of
Mm.
realizing how many men suffer in silence and wanting to normalize that a little bit more.
Okay, sweet. Love that. Thank you for sharing that, bro.
Yeah, of course.
Um, so I know that you are in a men's group.
Yes.
So my question to you is, and you might have alluded to it already, why do you participate in a men's group? I feel like we lost him again. Me. Jared left. All right, guys. Well, we are going to patiently wait. I said it earlier in the chat. If you want to drop into the chat box, what are you grateful for today? Um, I saw grateful for moving. Just finished moving boxes and feels so good to be back. This is true.
Back.
There you are.
Yeah. I switched to data to see if that helps.
Okay.
Um,
All
but
good.
yeah, so I think we were like why I'm in the men's group, right?
Yes. So why do you participate in one?
Cool. Yeah. And so for me, it was kind of dipping my toe in with the King of Hearts meetups of, for the first time actually opening up and, having these general discussion with other men and women that were interested or curious with it.
Mm.
And really for the men's group side of it, it came in where I wanted to go really deep.
Okay.
Right. And so having a dedicated group of men where, you know, every week we would meet and go really deep and know each other on a different level, really spoke to me. And again, you know, was something that I felt like I needed for that self progression and to kind of work on a lot of the demons that I possess.
Totally. So my question is for you would be then, for a man that is on the fence, maybe with regard to, you know, this work, or, you know, he realizes that there's something there's missing in my life, like what advice would you give to him?
You know, I think it would be a lot of just what I started with,
Yeah.
of trying new things and exposing yourself to new people,
Yeah.
right? And stepping out of that comfort zone and really pushing yourself to get into those uncomfortable environments
Totally.
where, you know, it's not what you're used to saying. It's not the type of people you're used to being around.
Well said. I love that. I love that. Okay, next question. When I say toxic masculinity, what comes up for you? What needs changing with that phrase, if anything?
So for me, when I hear toxic masculinity, it goes a lot to the shoulds, right? This is what a man is, or sorry, what a man is supposed to be.
Yep.
This is how a man should act. This is what you know, these are the things that a man is allowed to do.
Yep.
Right. And getting that pressure from outside of, you know, really the only emotions you're allowed to show is anger, right? Or stoicism.
Yep.
Right. Not being allowed to show sadness or fear or any of the other emotions, right? You know, that a man is into cars, a man is into sports,
Yep.
you know, a man, you know, his job is only to provide for the family, and there's no other, you know, if you're not doing that, you're not a man. You're,
sure.
You know, a man has to drive a nice car, right? A man has to have a big house, and that's the measure of masculinity. When, in truth, that's, you know, a lot of those are not the truth for a lot of men.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sweet. I love that. I really like how you bring up that, like, you are not those things, right? And that whole should thing, as opposed to like what resonates with me, right? How do I want to show up?
For sure. And I think, you know, one that we talked about a little bit is, you know, the idea that the only way to show strength is to not show emotion. When in, you know, in reality, in my opinion, you know, I think it's the opposite. I think that showing your true feelings and showing and acknowledging your insecurities to the world and still being strong because of it, and making you even stronger because you're able to admit those things and put them out to other people without having it as a reflection of who you are.
Amen. As Brene Brown would say, it becomes your superpower, right? Ironically.
Yes.
And it just sucks a lot that we are cultured, right, and taught, specifically us men, that to show emotion and what have you is a sign of weakness, right? And so because of that, we deflect anything to do with emotions, and therefore we deflect the feminine, which very, very eloquently embodies, you know, that cultivation of expressing emotion, right?
For sure. And I think, you know, it leads to a lot of those what can be seen as toxic responses, right? Of, you know, because you're not allowed to express this, you know, either, you know, some people will transfer it into only showing anger, right? Again, that's the only emotion that they know how to show. Or, you know, like, and what I typically would do was just push it down. Like, okay, I'm not allowed just to feel this emotion. I'm just going to push it down and push it down and push it down. And eventually what happens is, you know, you explode, right? And that looks different for a lot of different people and in a lot of different situations. But it's no matter what and to what degree, it's never good.
Dude, I absolutely love what you just said. It's a toxic response or reaction. It's not so much that masculinity is toxic. It's just when it's not dealt with properly, accordingly, then the response, the outcome is, for most men, anger, which isn't channeled in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
Well
Yep,
said,
for
bro.
sure.
Well said.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. So, next question here. So, at KOH, our fourth pillar is service. And I know for
Yes,
you, that looks like running a podcast series, which you alluded to. So, my question here is, why the podcast? And what are your intentions with this podcast?
for sure. And something that I've been on a real kick recently is, like the selfish versus selfless, right? And really not demonizing the selfish side of it. And so starting with that is, for me, I knew that it was an opportunity for a lot of growth because I have always been afraid to put myself out there,
Yeah.
right? Especially on social media. And it's a lot of, these insecurities that come up, right? Of, I don't like how I look in pictures. I don't like how I look in video. I'll post one post every 1 to 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. And, like telling people and putting on the mask, it was like, oh, I just don't do social media. Right. But in reality, it being the insecurities of, I feel like I don't look that great, or I don't want people to see me. I don't want people to judge me. And I shared it with a lot of you guys, where it was, I realized, I think it was what I craved the most and what scared me the most at the same time was being in that spotlight.
Yes.
Right. No matter how big it was. And so, and I felt like I could talk to people. Okay. And so I thought that a podcast was the way to go for me to kind of dip my toes into getting more comfortable with it. And so the selfish side was to allow myself to grow and to step out of my comfort zone and to push myself. And then the selfless side was especially like doing the work with King of Hearts, with the men's group, and realizing how much pain a lot of people in general are in.
Yeah.
And really going with the outlook of, if I can help one person, through a tough time, or to feel better about themselves, or, to pull them out of a dark place, then it's all worth it. Right. And so
Beautiful.
Doing that and sharing, I think the other big one was, letting people know that they're not alone. Right. Where, it was funny where I would always joke about like my quarter life crisis.
Yep.
Right. And I started telling people that, and it was funny, the response of how many people going through the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Or have gone through it, right?
Yep.
But just nobody talks about it. And so just that piece of like, there's other people going through similar things. Sometimes that's all you need.
Preach, dude. And I think that your podcast, that title, even like The Journey, is a great analogy. It's just like this is an ongoing discussion. It's an ongoing battle. It's an ongoing literally journey, right? Of just figuring it out. And I love that. Like, and just in case people don't know, hey, we're all figuring it out. Like, nobody knows what they're doing, right? Which is ironic. So yeah, man, I commend you for that.
Thank you.
All right. I got a big question here for you. Okay. Here we go. You ready?
I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay. So as a white man, when I say Black Lives Matter, what comes up for you?
For sure. And, I think a lot of this comes from even you and I having a lot of discussions around it. And I just want to preface first with, I'm still learning. 100%. Right. And so, if I say anything that comes off in a wrong way, I apologize to everybody for that, because I'm still learning. However, for me, the biggest one was, I have to admit, my eyes weren't open to how important it was until very recently. Right. And it was, I think, the feeling of, because I had not seen it firsthand in my life, I didn't realize the extent and the reach and the pain that it causes for so many people. And it was, it was the awakening that there are still a ton of problems in this world that need to be addressed.
Okay.
And that awareness needs to be brought to it. And it's not just okay.
Good ownership. I really like that response, dude. For your own, in your own experience and journey, why would you say, let's say maybe you weren't as aware or as awake
Mm-hmm.
to Black Lives Matter or some of these social injustices that are happening that have been going on for years, in your humble opinion and perspective?
For sure. Yeah. I think, first off was just me growing up.
Okay.
So I was in a very multicultural, like school system,
Mm-hmm.
really. Just the area that I lived in, there were so many different kinds of people that for me, it was just normal.
Okay.
Right. And I think it was two things that have really helped me wrap my mind around it
Mm.
were two sayings, and I shared this in our conversation, was acknowledging somebody else's trauma does
Mm-hmm.
not take away from your own.
Yeah.
And the second one being, just because you don't see something
Mm-hmm.
or you don't understand something
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that it's not true or isn't there.
Preach, brother.
Right. And so I think that's the reaction from a lot of people, right?
Mm.
Of, well, I have a lot going on in my life, right? And so I have problems and I don't have time for other people's problems,
Mm. Mm.
right? And, of like, if I acknowledge other people's problems, they're more important than mine,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't true at all,
Yes.
right? And then the second one, of just because, I haven't experienced it or I haven't seen it or, like I know my intention,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that other people don't have bad intentions. It doesn't mean that other people don't experience, um, racism or bigotry or whatever it might be. And just because I haven't seen it happen to them doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
Yes. Wow, brother, well said. I absolutely love that. So another question I have is, so then this black square on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram that's going down. One, did you black out your IG? And if you did, why did you? And if you didn't, why did you?
Yeah, for sure. And I think so. I did not.
Okay.
And it was something that I had internal dialogue with myself on,
Yep. Yep.
of because my eyes had been opened to it,
Mm-hmm.
and I had really started following the movement and trying to learn more and as much as I could. Um, I thought like, oh, okay, this is me showing, this would be me showing solidarity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, However, me not doing enough research on it and just, feeling that I could make an impact in different ways, I decided not to. Right. And then with kind of the blowback on it of, a lot of people um, feeling that it wasn't the right thing to do or it wasn't done in the right way,
Mm.
or whatever it might be, I again, haven't done, I know that it started out with, I believe, the music industry
Mm.
and two people in the music industry trying to bring awareness to it. But I know that it ended up in, clogging essentially a lot of the communications and actually bringing awareness away from the movement.
Yep. Love that, Jared.
Yeah. And so I guess for me, it was, I went to if the idea behind it is not taking awareness away from the movement,
Mm.
then, just a personal choice of focusing on it and not posting anything will achieve a similar result.
Hmm. Okay. Hey, man, I respect that. Which brings me to my next question, because I know that, yes, you didn't put the black square up, and I never took that as like I'm not searching my people's IG for like who's posting black squares and who isn't. Like,
Yeah.
however, I just know for you, I know Hafiz and I were recently on your podcast, and we had a dialogue around Black Lives Matter, and for me in that moment, that showed me that you were on the team, right? you were being in your own creative, imaginative way, reimagining how can I show up? How can I be a part of the team, right? And it doesn't need to look like me posting a black square, right? And that's something that I've been trying to educate and tell people, like, if you're gonna post a black square and then put your feet up and be like, oh yeah, I've done my work for the day and I'm a social justice warrior. No, you've actually done nothing for the cause. You've done nothing. However,
Mm-hmm.
however, how can you be original and creative? And so I want to commend you for doing that podcast and having two brothers on your podcast and be willing to fillet yourself open and be like, I don't have all the answers, and have a conversation. So if I had a hat on, dude, I would take my hat off to you. And you're a stud for that. And I love you for that. And so my question here is, why did you create that environment? You didn't have to, but why did you? And once again, as a white male, why is this topic and discussion important to have?
For sure. And I guess, while I was in that mind space, it was, what can I do to be effective? And what can I personally do to show that I care and to help, hopefully, right? In whatever minuscule way that it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was, but it just, something in my mind said, like, I want to have a conversation with Nuke and Hafiz.
Yeah.
And, a lot of it, I have to commend both of you, was offering that safety to do it. Was because we had had some initial conversations. It was, I knew that you guys would create a safe space for me to use my curiosity and to ask the questions that I feel like a lot of people don't want to ask or feel afraid to. And, there's a lot of shame in it and there's a lot of, okay, well, I don't want to offend people. And so how do I ask what's the right thing to do without being offensive? Right. Or without getting, a response of, well, you should know what to do, or, the fear of that response leading to inaction. Right. And so that's where I came from. And I wanted to come from a lot of the questions that I personally had and that I had heard from other people. But like I said, we're afraid to ask. And so that's what we did, and ask those hard questions about, what should I do? Right. How to, I guess I would explain it of, like, by saying something, for instance, like, I don't see color. Right. Of, well, that's coming from a good place. I'm trying to say that I'm standing with you, but why is that offensive, or why does that cause a reaction, or why should I not be saying that? Right. And hearing that, because I think a lot of times people's intentions are good, but the way that they act on it isn't appropriate. Right. Sure. And again, the subconscious of, maybe they're subconsciously doing something which is harmful or hurtful or perpetuates the problem. Yeah.
I love that.
So does that answer your question? There's a second part to it.
No, that was great, dude. I absolutely love that. And once again, like, I just want to commend you and say that you're an absolute stud for being willing and able to sit with two brothers, right, and have a conversation and ask those questions. And I guess my follow-up question to that would be, if you would come, and I'll speak for myself, if you would come and be like, hey, Nuke, I have some questions for you. Can we talk about Black Lives Matter and what have you? And I had told you, you know what? Go figure it out. I'm done educating you or your people around my culture, my history. How would you have responded? How would you have reacted? How would that have made you feel?
I think honestly it would have led to inaction.
Okay.
Right. And I feel a lot of times it would be almost inciting shame, right? Inciting shame or fear, right? Of, well, I don't know what's appropriate, or I don't know what'll help. And so it's better for me to do nothing than to add to the problem,
Hmm.
which of course doing nothing adds to the problem.
Yeah.
And so, I think that a lot of times that, kind of getting stuck because not knowing what the right answer is, and
Yeah.
therefore not choosing any answer.
Hmm.
And so I think it's a very thin line to walk,
Yep.
because the feeling of I want to help but I don't want to offend at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or because you can't see my intentions,
Yep.
right? Only I know my true intentions,
Mm-hmm.
and the fear of having those misconstrued, I think really just holds a lot of people in place.
Love that. Love that. Uh, Dude, like, I think that's the case for a lot of people, which is why they don't know how to respond, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a constructive, whole mindset, because there's fear and
Yeah.
shame around that. So I guess my
Yeah.
question for you then, having now had a couple conversations with Hafiz and I, having been on the podcast and distilled, what would you tell someone who is listening to this and maybe doesn't know how to navigate, having a
Mm-hmm.
conversation or what to do? What advice would you give them?
Um, I would say the first one is honestly going inside of yourself and seeing if you truly do care, or if you're doing it to look good, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to be on the wrong side of things.
Yeah.
And once you have that, once you have your intention set of what are you trying to do, then doing the research on it,
Hmm.
right? Actually doing the research for yourself. And then seeing, if you can find a safe environment to ask those questions. But at the same time, mustering up the courage to be okay with your actions being taken in the wrong way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even doing that podcast, I had a lot of anxiety about, I hope that people understand where this is coming from, right? I
Mm.
hope that people understand this is coming from a good place. And, I'm not trying to do it for awareness, or I'm not trying to make myself look good, or I'm not trying to show that I care. I truly just want to help, and I'm not trying to, put my beliefs
Mm-hmm.
and try to change anybody else's mind of what the right way to go about it is.
Totally.
Right. And then I think the last part is just actually accepting the humility aspect of it. And I think, like, especially as, I'll say like a white male,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big one,
Preach,
right?
brother, preach.
Of just because, just because, again, because I don't see it, or because I don't understand it, or because I don't think that's the way it should be done.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it's not necessarily for me to say.
Mm.
Right. And so listening first and seeing what actually helps the movement, and the humility to admit that I was wrong, and to try to consciously change my ways, is the most important thing. And I guess, sorry, just to add on to
No, this is
that,
great.
was one that Hafiz, a post that Hafiz put up,
Mm-hmm.
basically showing the different roles that people play,
Yes.
right? And realizing that you don't have to be on the front lines, right?
Yes.
You can support and you can help move the needle in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't necessarily look like protesting, or doesn't look like podcasting, or doesn't look like posting a black square on your social media. There are so many different ways that you can support and that you can help, and finding which way is true to you and which way you can actually give the most to.
Jared, you are a stud, man. Dude, that was well said, man.
Thank you.
And once again, like, I'm going to say it again, dude, like, the fact that you just said what you said and how you said it, man, is just a testament to who you are. And I love that you capped off that with just humility and being willing to, like, put your hand up and be like, I don't have all the answers. However, I want to know, and I'm genuinely curious. And I absolutely
Mhm.
love that because, and I say this with caution because I don't like always referring to this. However, as a white male, and like I'm gonna put that on the shelf and just say, as a male, well done, dude. Like, there's not
Thank you.
enough of us that are willing to be like humble and be like, hey, I don't know. And because I don't know, I'm willing to ask questions. And I think if we as a species were willing to do that on a more consistent basis, our world would look radically different.
For sure. And I think that goes back a little bit to that, the shoulds,
Mm-hmm.
right? The shoulds around, toxic masculinity and just people in general of you should know this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or you should act this way, or you should have all the answers,
Hmm.
but having that humility and taking a step back and just saying, I don't, and I want to learn, I
Yep.
think is super helpful and would all help us in so many different areas,
Mm-hmm.
as humankind progress and be better.
Stud. All right, bro. Okay, so I got another question here.
Yeah,
As a conscious white man, do you have any guilt or shame around Black Lives Matter? If so,
for
why and where is that coming from?
for sure. And when I was thinking about this question, actually,
Mm.
the word shame, I've really tried to eliminate.
Okay.
And I think that guilt and shame are very different,
Okay.
because I think that shame is one of those feelings that leads to those toxic outbursts,
Okay.
right? In whatever they might be. Because you're telling yourself you're wrong,
Mm.
right? And not showing yourself that self-compassion. However, guilt, for sure. And I think my biggest piece of guilt around the subject of the Black Lives Matter movement is my that I didn't full-heartedly acknowledge it sooner,
Hmm.
right? Of knowing like, okay, yes, it probably exists in some parts of the world, right? Like, okay, it's probably a problem, but not realizing how big of a problem it
Yeah.
is, and not truly accepting it and giving it as much attention as I should have. And until the last, I would say, month, I haven't. And
Mm.
so that is where I hold a lot of guilt around.
Mm.
And I apologize to you guys already, but again, that was my fault,
Mm.
and I take ownership over that, right? Yeah, of again, it's not necessarily that I didn't act on it or
Mm-hmm.
put something out sooner. It's more that I didn't in my heart truly acknowledge it until very recently.
Mm.
And that I have guilt around.
Hmm. Jared, dude, and the fact that you can say that on an IG live, once again, is just a testament to your masculinity, to the man that you want to be, and how you continue to show up. And so, as far as I'm concerned, man, like, you are a king, dude. You're an absolute king. And
Thank you.
just to have watched your progression from the first time you walked into a heart to heart to now be on an IG live with you, and having been on multiple podcasts with you, which I'm grateful for, but
Yeah.
I just want to say it here live, and I've said it in front of the boys, and I want to say it here, like, you are a man's man, dude. And
Thank you.
yes, maybe in the past you didn't know, and we can't knock you for that. However, moving forward, your response and the leadership you've shown and your grace and humility has been nothing but that of a king. And
Thank you.
so I'm proud of you. I love you. I am glad you're on the team. I am glad that we are in a men's group together, and I can call you my friend and know that you have my back.
Thank you. That means a lot to
So
me.
yeah, man. So I just wanted to say that to you, and I know I've said it before, and I will continue to say it, man. Like, I love the growth journey you're on. And so to wrap up here, I
Yeah.
want to I want to give you the floor. And if there's anything that's on your mind when it comes to men's mental health, to KOH, to Black Lives Matter and what have you, like the floor is yours. Like, and I don't know, maybe if you have some questions that you want to bring up, the floor is yours.
For sure. Cool. Thank you. I really appreciate it. You have no idea how much it means to me. And it actually, it triggered in me to speak out of, one, commending you, because I can't just say a compliment. I got to give one back. But because it was in that first King of Hearts heart to heart that we had, where you pushed me to step out of my comfort zone, because I came in there and I told myself, I'm just going to listen. I'm not going to say anything. I'm here by myself. I don't know anybody. Like, I'm going to listen. And the conversations that we started having around things that I didn't think anyone else struggled with, like especially men, of like body image, right? Or self-confidence or whatever else it might be, something in me started, like that fire of like, I could feel the pressure wanting to come out, of wanting to share that, I also experienced these things.
Me too.
yeah, exactly. And you were the one that prompted me. Because it must have been showing physically in my body that like, I wanted to talk, but I couldn't. And I felt my heart racing, and I wanted to, with everything, to just let it out. And then, but I wouldn't allow myself to. And you prompted me of just like, Jared, do you have something to say on this? And it came out. And, and the release, and, that the feeling of almost like euphoria of putting that poison out of my body, of not holding it in anymore, was incredible, and was really what kind of started me on this journey. And, that has been something that I have really pushed myself to continue to do. And again, going around that shame of, I held a lot of shame about myself inside, right? And by putting it out, by putting out those insecurities, by letting people know like a lot of the things that I struggle with, has helped me immensely.
Yeah.
Because they're always 10 times worse in your head than they are when you actually put them out. Yeah. Right. Like one of the biggest ones for me was, I think it was in that first one that I shared for the first time, with somebody that wasn't extremely close to me. And I think at that time it was maybe 2 people I'd shared it with, of me seeing a therapist. Yeah. Right. And it was funny of like, when I would hear other people and like pushing them and being like, that's great. Like, that's so good that you see one, like, it's going to be so good for you. However, when looking at myself, being like, I can't tell other people that I see a therapist. Yeah. Right. Because that shows weakness. That shows that I'm not perfect. That shows a lot of things. And that was the biggest one that I struggled with my whole life, was in order to be good enough, I had to be perfect. Yeah. Right. And so sharing imperfections and insecurities with others is the farthest thing away from being perfect, but has allowed me to grow so much, because it takes the power away from it. Dude, welcome to the dichotomy, right? Yeah. Dichotomy. Yeah. And so that's really what I've pushed myself to do. And, the things that, a lot of times the things that scare us the most are the things we most have to do. And so that's what I've continued to try to do as much as possible. And I was so lucky to find, men like yourself and all the guys at King of Hearts and all the guys in the men's group to hold space for me and to push me as well, and to call me out of my bullshit, which I think is something that's so important too. Of, a lot of times, 1, we don't go deep with each other, and 2, we don't, we're not honest with each other. Right. And so going deep and like asking better than, or more than just, how was your day? Yes. Right. Like, how are you actually feeling, and allowing that safe environment for me to say, like, I've been feeling bad, right? I've been feeling sad. I've been depressed, whatever it might be. And then being honest with people of like, you're kind of full of shit right now. Right? Or like, this is your blind spot. Yes. Right. Like, this is how you see the situation, but from the outside looking in, this is what's actually going on, most likely. Or consider this. Yes. Right. And taking that step back and allowing and pointing that out to others and having that done to me has as well helped immensely.
Wisdom. Wisdom from King Jared. I love that, dude.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
of
Yeah,
course.
question?
No, keep going. Keep going. I'm
I was just
listening.
gonna, I was gonna say, I wanted to ask you of
Yeah.
like, what are some of the positive impacts that you've seen just with working through people through the King of Hearts, and one of the biggest changes that comes to mind?
That's great, man. I would say it's just that it's getting guys to just be aware that they are not alone, right? Andy says it all the time, and I love him for that. It's like the time, like a wolf can survive, right? It can survive by itself. However, it thrives in a pack. It
Yeah,
thrives in community. And it's the same thing. Like the time of the lone wolf is done. Men, it is now time for community and connection. And just like, and again, like our society, our culture, the structures we participate in tell men that they can't talk about their emotions, and that if they do, they're considered less than. So then what do you expect men are going to do, right? We need to be willing to like reimagine these structures that we all participate in, and see where we feed into it and stop it, which is why like myself, which is why just KOH and even like our men's group, like that's why like conscious men that are whole and healthy and that have healed their wounds from their past are going to be this new wave of change, right? That
yeah,
teach their boys like, hey, son, like you're allowed to cry and feel what you're feeling, and how do we be better? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, daughter of mine, like you are loved, whether you have makeup on or makeup on or off, right? You are loved. It doesn't matter what dress you're in, right? Like you are loved. Don't go looking for it outside of you, right? Like just stuff like that. Like we need conscious men that are willing to show up day in and day out. And so for me, it's just it's like when you see a guy like make that light bulb go on, and you're like, wow, like I'm not my emotions, I'm not my
yeah,
thoughts. Oh my goodness, other men are also going through this. I'm not crazy. Like
yeah,
that's what it's all about for me. And then
yeah,
after that, like, hey, let's reimagine what being a man looks like for you in 2020.
yeah, for sure. Love that. I
That's me,
think,
man.
yeah, I think one of the most powerful things for myself as well, just going through this journey, was bringing the gravity of it
Mm.
into my own personal life. And what I mean by that was getting into the actual shit
Yeah.
with people,
Yeah.
right? With men, and like seeing just how big of a problem it is,
Mm-hmm.
and going back to some of those, toxic releases
Yep.
of, you know, denying your emotions or pushing your emotions down, whatever it might be. And one of those, being the ultimate, really, in a lot of ways, of suicide,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
hearing men that I know and that I care about, and I see as strong and happy and have so much potential and all these good things, talk about contemplating suicide, or
Yeah.
that they've attempted it in the past, or whatever it might be. And, that brought a new level of understanding and a new
For
level
sure.
of urgency to it, of, this is a problem and it needs to be fixed, because it won't only elevate men, but it'll save men's lives.
100%. 100%. Love that, brother.
Yeah.
Okay, we got 10 minutes here before we
Cool.
leave. What would you say to the man who is on the fence around men's mental health? One, and then two, what would you say to the man who doesn't know what to do around Black Lives Matter and how to contribute?
Mm-hmm. And when you say, just to clarify,
Yeah,
so a man that's on the fence about mental health, do
yeah,
you mean of them committing to it? Do you mean of them accepting that it's something that needs to be addressed? Of
all of it,
like, what do
brother.
you think?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, exactly.
cool.
You pick it.
I would say again of like for somebody that's on the fence, of almost again bringing it back to that selfish nature,
Mm.
which is okay. Of by exploring this,
Mhm.
it will make you stronger. It will open doors for you in your life. It will allow you to achieve more,
Mm.
right? And it will take a lot of that pressure and a lot of that pain away,
Mhm.
right? Instead of ignoring it or pushing it down or pretending like it's not there,
Mhm.
allowing yourself to, the image that comes to my mind is drop the sandbags,
Yeah.
right? Of lighten that load
Mm.
for yourself will allow you to achieve so much more. It doesn't
Totally.
have to be for anybody else. It doesn't have to be this altruistic thing of
Mm.
it will make you as a person better,
Yes.
right? And you don't necessarily have to be loud about it. You don't, and it doesn't make you less of a man. It does the exact opposite.
Mm. Preach, brother.
Yeah. And the second one was somebody who doesn't know what to do for Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, or like how to show up, or whatever the case might be. Like, what advice would you give them?
For sure. I think for me, like I always come back to intent,
Yep.
right? And finding the intent and doing it for the right reasons
Mhm.
is the most important thing,
Mm.
right? And finding your lane, like we talked about before,
Yeah.
of it doesn't have to look like what you think it's supposed to look like.
Mhm.
There's so many different ways that you can help and that you can support, and really the biggest one in my opinion is just not looking inside yourself and questioning yourself and
Yeah.
not allow it, and genuinely living your life with love no matter who is on the other side,
Yeah.
right? No matter based on race, based on gender, based on sexual preference, based on what country you're from.
Yeah.
It's looking inside and just giving equal opportunity and treating everybody with kindness.
Wise words from the king.
Thank you,
Uh,
sir.
Jared, how can
Yes,
people follow your podcast? How do they get hold of you? Let the people know, man.
for sure. So podcast is called The Journey with Jared. It's on basically every platform: Spotify, Apple Podcasts. So you can find me there. It's a yellow logo with a white circle. Um, my Instagram is just my name, Jared Salakin. Um, yeah, as I start putting myself out there more, there'll be some other places, but right now those are the two main ones.
Love it. Thank you, brother. Thank you for your time. Again, you're such a stud, dude. And I know it doesn't land with you sometimes, but I'm going to keep saying it because
Yeah,
you are, man. And
thank you.
brother, I would go to war. I'd go to battle for you and with you. I love you, man.
Thank you. I love you too. It means so much to me. I'm so glad that you're in my life and can't wait to connect again. All right.
Yeah, man. Thank you again. Take care, yeah?
Thank you. Yeah. We'll see you.
Later. There you have it, people. Yes, Jared, follow him on his podcast. It's so good. He's done quite a bit. And you'll also hear my voice there. So thanks for making time, guys. We never take it lightly. Those of you that show up, love you, appreciate you. And until we meet again, you know the motto: truth, love, and positivity. Go execute. Later, guys.